except for the fact that I have no agenda. Does everybody have one of these packets, has the agenda on the front? Anybody need one? Hold your hand up if you need one. Hold your hand up if you wish it would have been you who wrote it. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. We have a lot to talk about. And I'm going to find some joy and pray for us. Lord, thank you for this morning, and thank you for this group of people that you have given me as a family. We have work that we have to do in order to be present in this community, fulfilling the mission that you've called us to fulfill. Today, we have a lot of business stuff to talk about. I just ask that you would be among us. Let everybody be kind and considerate of other people's opinions, and let us arrive at a point to move forward. I thank you for each and every person that has helped me along this path. It has been a long one, and it will continue to be a long one. I thank you for the grace given to me from the people of this congregation. I ask that you would just bless our time together, lead us where you would have us to go. Give us answers that will make us a force in this community that is your desire. Thank you for the people who are here. Thank you for the people who are online, who are anxiously awaiting this discussion as well. Be with us. I know that surely your presence is in this place. In Christ's name I pray, amen. Okay, so the first thing we have in the packet that you have is a copy of the Congregational Meeting minutes from our last meeting, September 26th. Thank you, Barb Tyner, for filling in for Sharon. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to glance through them. Does anybody see or have any changes in the minutes that you have before you? Any questions, comments, or concerns? Having none, I'll ask that somebody will move that we accept the minutes as presented, and a second, please. Thank you. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as they are presented, please indicate that by saying aye. Anyone opposed, say no. Motion carries. Minutes admitted. Thank you very much. Okay, Diane.
All right, in the budget for 2021, we forecast about $254,000 in contributions, which includes the pledge income, non-pledge income, and loose plate. And as the end of November, we've received about $225,750. I project we'll be very close by the end of December. Fortunately, our second PPP loan was forgiven, and that will improve our bottom line this year. So I feel comfortable that we are holding our own for now financially. Regarding the pledge campaign, for 2021, we had 57 pledging units. To date, we have 57 pledging units and are still awaiting 13 more units who gave last year, and I anticipate they will renew it for 2022 as well, and those hopefully will be trickling in soon. It's gratifying to see people who pledge for the first time and people who pledge again after having taken a hiatus from the actual commitment of a pledge card. In addition, there are over 20 donors who contribute, and Federated is very appreciative of them as well. The amount pledged for 2022 so far is $202,000. This is for the general budget. As the pledge cards come in, I'll be able to refine the draft budget for 2022. However, it's again likely that we're looking at a deficit budget unless cuts are made and/or donations increase. The income from 2020 and 2021 for the forgiven PPP loans is not expected to repeat for next year. On a more positive note, the Better Than a Buck recipient for October through December is Jubilee Christmas, and to date, over $3,300 has been donated. And I think I again second the generosity of people here. I'm very grateful to Federated for its members who donate their time, their talents, and money in the Lord's service. I feel that not only are we making a positive difference in the greater Lafayette community, but the global community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Lisa?
I'm super excited to announce that our organ is completely updated and finishing touches were made this last Wednesday. So thanks to Milo and his incredible team of workers to make that happen. You'll be hearing more about the organ. We're working on a dedication service, and that will happen sometime in 2022, but super excited that this has taken place. Thank you so much for your generosity and kindness, and please give grace to Gary because he's learning a whole new instrument. So thank you to Gary, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, so in old business, besides the organ update, I think everybody knows this, but several of the ladies went through and created a new directory for us. The directories are at Servant Central. The part of the desire to make a new directory was that as Dusty shepherds this crock, no, that's not right. That would be flock. As Dusty shepherds this flock, it is really bad to be up here. Okay, so he wanted to make sure that everyone was accounted for and that no one was missed, and that if there was something that was awry in any individual person's life, any need that they had, that there would be a central group of people who would keep track of those things. And so historically, as I understand, Federated had a shepherding program in the past. And so the deacons and the care council have been working together with myself and Dusty to create a structure for people to be able to not be tracked, but be communicated with. So, you know, if I have somebody, I'm a shepherd, and if I have somebody in my group of folks that I don't see for several weeks or I don't hear from, then I will be paying specific attention to those folks and their presence and their needs, reaching out to them. So everyone in the congregation should now have an assigned shepherd, and that person will reach out to you, hopefully on a monthly basis, either by email, by a card, by phone, and their goal is really just to be present in your life and supportive. So that process has begun, and I'm certain a lot of you have already heard from someone, but that's the status of that, up and running. So the next thing I want to do is just tell you a little bit about what you have in your packet. So obviously the agenda is on the first page. On the back of the agenda are the meeting minutes from the last meeting. The third page that you have is a proposed motion for the changes that we're going to be talking about today. So I tried to be as specific as I could to present this information to you that we've talked about as we look at the restructuring of our governance in this church. And so we are not making any motions today. We are not voting on anything today. What we are doing is receiving the idea, the point we are in the discussion, and looking for things that we feel need to be changed. So I made the final draft of this on Friday night. Already I have some corrections and suggestions. So we are going to go through that. We're going to go through this today. And then normally the Congregational Council meets the fourth Tuesday of the month. And traditionally, since I've been here, that December meeting gets canceled. So this year it's not going to be canceled, but it will happen, and anyone and everyone who wants to have input into what we're going to talk about today is welcome to come to that meeting, because at that meeting the council will be making a final draft of what the motion for changes will be. So that meeting is the fourth Tuesday of the month. It's in Trimmer Hall. We will have a Zoom link for those of you who are watching from home so that you'll be able to participate, not just streaming in here, but the ability to be present and participate. So just so you know that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I don't have everything written in front of me, blown up in really big letters like normal, so when I get lost, just bear with me. The first thing I want to say is that there are some changes from the letter that I sent out. Oh, wait a minute, before I do that. Next page, go to the back. There's a page that looks like this. So this page is kind of a diagram of the central part of the changes that we're going to talk about. So you will find an executive board that is much like the Congregational Council we have now. Below them is what is now an advisory council, might be a ministry council. The final title of this particular board remains to be seen. But it consists of the chairs of all the current boards that we have. Those chairs in the future will be team leaders. Today we're going to call them chairs because that's how we know them as it stands right now. So what will happen is the executive board, who's responsible for the fiduciary and the management of the administration of the church, needs to be focused and is focused on moving the church forward. So they come up with an idea or a group of ideas, then they present them to this ministry council or advisory council. And then the advisory council will advise them and say, yes, we think this is a really good idea. It will help move us forward. Or, maybe not so much. So let's talk about how we can do it differently or not do it. So the basic concept that you'll hear as we go through is we're going to go from a group of this list, which is about 66 positions that at this point have to be elected on an annual basis. Some of those positions carry over because there are terms that last 2 or 3 years. And so that will change from all of the boards that we have now to a central board. So as you can see from that slide, the executive congregation is at the top because we're a congregational congregation. So it's a congregation who votes on everything and makes the decisions. Everybody else can come up with a wonderful idea, but until the congregation votes and says, yes, we agree that we'll move forward, nothing happens. So that's what the process is we're beginning today. We're saying to you, we've done this work. This is the point we're at. We want to present these details to you. And if you have suggestions of things that will make this process and these ideas work better, from now until the time we actually make the motion and vote on it in January, there will be time for you to interact, either through an email, through a phone call, a conversation with me, a conversation with anybody on the board, on the Congregational Council right now, Dusty, any other officer of the church. Everybody will be willing to sit down and hear any suggestions that you may have. As you can see, I asked Orlo to do a slide for me that had the hierarchy of the church, the organizational structure, because it's kind of confusing in that the trustees and the endowment board are separate. I mean, the endowment board is a whole separate entity. It's a whole separate animal. They have their own bylaws, they have their own treasurer, they have their own everything. So that money and the functioning of that board is not going to be impacted by these changes in any sense at all, because it can't be. Legally, it's a different entity than the church. And so I don't think a lot of people maybe know that, but that's the case. The trustees then are, as you know, the folks who approve the spending of the dollars that we have. They are the folks that manage the property and make sure that we've got heat and that, that the building functions as it needs to. So those two groups, although they're part of the larger, the larger picture, they are not officially a part of the executive board or an advisory council. So just so you kind of have a picture of that. So with that being said, there's a slide up there that has numbers, Mike. It's probably your fourth slide, actually. So we looked at the election slots that we have currently. If they're all added up with the boards that we have now, and with the addition of the folks who function in the care council, and the folks who function on marketing and media, there are 66 slots that need to stay filled, either by being elected freshly each year or by carrying on. So I asked, yesterday we went through the year to see what the numbers were. So the average attendance that we had in worship for the first 6 months of the year was 39. From July to now, the recent 5 months, the average, I think, went to 69. I don't have the number right in front of me. 67, the bottom line there. So if you, obviously, this is the issue, if you have 66 slots that you have to fill, and your best average for 5 months is 67, therein lies the problem. So we're going to talk about a new idea. And I just want everybody to understand that what we're talking about is just a beginning point today. So when the other piece that goes along with that is, initially we weren't sure how the bylaws would be impacted by these changes. And so there have been several discussions, and I have learned a lot about bylaws. I've learned there are churches that set aside bylaws, there are churches that suspend bylaws, and there are some fairly significant legal reasons why we should not do that. So we're going to err on the side of caution, and we are going to revise the bylaws that we currently have. Those bylaws, in general, we're going to bring most of what's in them right now forward. But the pieces of the bylaws that have specifically to do with the existence of boards, the numbers of people on those boards, the terms of people on those boards, those types of things will need to be adjusted because we have to function within the boundaries of the bylaws that we have. Right now, the bylaws that we have don't support or changing the structure that we're talking about. So along with the presentation of the motion for this governance structure, will also be a proposal to provisionally amend the bylaws. So there's been a lot of conversation happening. There's been a lot of changes in this process from when I first presented it. So what I want to do today is go through the main parts of what's being proposed in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to read this just so that I don't miss a piece. The new executive council would be a central decision-making body that other churches call their boards or elders. Its responsibility is to serve as the administration and fiduciary of the congregation's mission. In a real sense, the whole congregation is responsible and the fiduciary of its mission. We are not free to do whatever we want. We are, as a congregation, individually and collectively responsible before God to discern what God is calling us to do as a congregation, and to be faithful in doing it. Let's see. We, by delegating to the executive council and charging it with the task of leading the congregation, is discerning our God-given mission, which we've worked on earlier this year and basically remains the same, but sometimes the words change. What God is calling us to do and what we believe the purpose and values of the church support. So the Congregational Council also has responsibilities of coordinating the programs of the church. So in the new situation that we have, which is, I think, Mike, in the first slide, the first one. Nope, maybe not the first one. Flip through for me. So what we have is the executive board is going to function as the Congregational Council functions now. There will be fewer people that are on the Congregational Council, and it will at that point become an executive board. So if you look on the proposed motion page, the very first thing says the Congregational Council will be reduced by 2 ad hoc members and will be renamed the Executive Board. So the first correction already that has happened is we're going to remove from that first sentence the words ad hoc, because the congregational members that are voted into that position are not ad hoc members. They're voting members of the council. So that's a change that's happened already. The 2 current boards that won't change at all will remain, as I said, the trustees and the endowment fund, because they are responsible for the managing of the monies of the church, and because we have no ability, at least as I understand it, to change anything about how the endowment board exists. Nothing there will be changing for right now. We've added into what we're calling this right now the advisory council, a team of people called the worship team. So when somebody said to me, when we did the survey 6 months ago, what are the things that are important to you in this worship service? Somebody said to me, I don't know why we're doing this. And the reason that we did it is because as we were inviting a new pastor and moving forward, it was important for him to know the things that this congregation holds as very, very important. And through that, there were many suggestions about things that we wanted to focus on. And so the creation of a worship team puts more eyes and ears and people together to be able to do that. So people will be invited to join that team who are interested in the order, the content, the creation of the worship service as it goes. Right now, the staff is doing that, and they will continue to do that, but with input from some other folks as part of a worship team. So right now, as the boards exist, the deacon board, the mission board, each of those separate boards has a chairperson. All the people are elected, and the people together elect a chairperson. So what I'm asking them to do is, from the group that they have right now, choose a person who will sit on this advisory council, ministry council, whatever we end up calling it. And those folks will be elected. So when we present the slate as we normally do in a year, it will have fewer people, probably about half, in the 30s instead of in the 60s, because we're going to have to still elect the members of the trustees and the members of the endowment board. So we're going to cut pretty much in half the people that have to be filling slots. Those people don't have to be elected every year because, as I said, they have terms. But so what I'm asking them to do, what I'm asking the deacons to do, and the mission folks to do, and the Christian ed folks to do, is pull from within their group right now who might function as the representative on this advisory council. Then that person's name, whoever it is, will go on the slate that we'll vote on in February. So we've added to, we have these groups that work on the side but really are not elected boards. One of them is marketing and media folks. One of them is the care council. And so the work that those folks do is vital to the success of our church congregation. And so the problem that I've heard about since I've gotten here and since I've been left with this task is communication. So what I'm trying to do, and what we as a council are trying to do, is draw the board, the leaders of the boards and the teams together so that we're working as a whole group. The mission folks know what the trustees are doing, and the trustees are talking to the care council people, and it brings those leaders of those ministries together to improve the communication and ensure that the mission of this church is being carried out by the people who live in it. So the smaller one board structure with the supporting wings of the trustees and the endowment board is a structure that is most successfully used in a church whose numbers are below 100, which is where we are right now. At one point, there wasn't a space to sit in the pews, as I understand. So the bylaws that we have and the boards that we have came out of that situation. Now, we have an average attendance of 39 or 40 half the year, and probably the high 60s the second half of the year. So now what I'm asking people to do is be willing to be a team leader. And so there won't be a deacon board anymore. There won't be a mission board anymore. There will be an advisory council or a ministry council, and the folks that sit on that council will be responsible for recruiting other people to work with them on a particular project. Because the issue, as I see it, is that if you have boards that have terms of a year or 2 years or 3 years, our life and people's lives right now are so hectic and so different than they have been in the past, that for somebody to commit to a time frame like that is very difficult. So what I'm inviting people to do is not change their thoughts about duty and responsibility and giving to the church, but I'm asking you to go to the places where your passions are, the things that you enjoy doing. Anybody in this church who knows Jubilee Christmas knows that there are some star players in Jubilee Christmas, and they're going to be there every year. Whether they're elected to a board or a board exists, those people whose passion it is to serve the children and families of our community that have needs, those people will be there. They will be participating. The difference is there won't be slots that need to be filled for the sake of having slots filled. As it stands right now, Number 7, as you see, all church officers, members at large of the Congregational Council, and team leaders, as well as members of the Board of Trustees and the Endowment Board will be elected. I've said that. The Board of Trustees will remain at this point with 6 members. There is at least one trustee who's coming off of the board by attrition this year. So Orlo, with the rest of the board, will decide who they think might be a good person to be the 6th person, and that person will appear on the slate to be decided when we next vote. The endowment board, for those of you who don't know, the bylaws require that the endowment board has 9 voting members, and then 3 members of the senior leadership of the church, myself, the trustee chair, and the minister. So currently, the endowment board sits with 6 members. So there are many positions in the bylaws as they stand right now where we just are unable to fill them. We're unable to do what they're calling us to do. And those are the things moving forward that hopefully will change. I've had a couple of people offer me to work on a small group to revise those bylaws. So for those of you who have offered that, I'm certainly accepting that offer. If there's anybody else here who has not said that to me but would like to be a part of that group, if you'll let myself or Dusty know or Pauline know, we're going to be working on that between now and when we meet again in January. So number 10, all those so choosing may be involved in the ongoing or intermittent projects of any team at any time and may be able to participate in more than one team. So for example, we have this new worship team, and so everything that has anything to do with worship would fall under that grouping. So the things that we do in church, prayer, music, communion, the sermon, children's message, all of those things fall into that group. So historically, the deacons have always taken care of setting up communion, which right now is a whole lot easier than it has been in the past. So this is a perfect example. Everybody who knows Lynn knows that if there's something going on in the kitchen, she's going to be involved in it. The other thing is that she's usually right now the person who puts the communion stuff together so that on the first Sunday of the month, everybody's got a little cup. So this is a perfect example of how that will work. Lynn, who will be interested in working in what will become the fellowship team, which is formerly the deacons, will be able to function in that group. She may be the chair of that group. I don't know who they're going to choose, but that group will exist. But she'll also be able to do communion, which will fall under the worship team. So the goal, again, is for people to be able to serve this church family in the things that they love and where their passions are. It's a perfect example. The problem is that, or the potential problem is twofold. One is that, the people who usually are the people working that are on the boards are not going to be already chosen. So the person who's the team leader of the fellowship team, which will be the new name for where the deacons' functions are now, that person will be elected. But there won't be 10 other people working with them so that those 10 people are going to decide who's going to be an usher if we have them again and who's going to be a greeter. So if you have never done that, but you don't want to do the rest of the stuff the deacons do or the fellowship team will do, but you wouldn't mind standing at the door welcoming people, you'll have the opportunity to do that. So what I'm going to say to you is, although we're going to elect just a few people, those few people are going to still need everybody here to help them. Everybody's going to need to pitch in and do a small piece. But you don't have to do a year of it, or 2 years of it, or 3 years of it. You just have to be willing to do those little pieces as we go along. So you'll hear probably a lot more from the pulpit and from me about we need people to go Christmas caroling with us because we don't want the church to think only Dusty cares enough about them to come out and sing. Although I hear he's got a really nice voice, and so it would probably be okay. So understand, we're not saying that we don't still need all of those people to help, because we still need all of those people to help. It's just that we are not asking anybody to fill a slot for a time frame. We're asking you to work where your love is and where your passion is. Diane, it amazes me because she's constantly focused, as do the trustees, constantly focused on the money that we have and who pays what bill and what account it comes out of. And I'm lucky just to get my online bills paid. I'm so grateful that all of us have different skill sets. And, the things that you've always wanted to do but haven't, now you're going to have the opportunity to do it because you're only going to be committing to that one particular thing at that one particular time. 14, the very last thing is, again, talking about the bylaws. And I think there was something else. Well, there are a couple of other changes that will show. So what will happen is this is going to change, and as it changes, I will send it to Joyce, and Joyce will put it in the newsletter so you all can see the changes as they're happening. And then in January, when the date is sort of up in the air for that right now, in January when we come back, we will have a final copy of what this motion will be. Everybody will have had the chance to contribute, and at that point, a motion will be made, and it will be listed out like this, so everybody understands what the changes are. And then we'll vote on whether or not we as a congregation are willing to try this. At the same time, there will be a copy of the provisional revised amended bylaws that you'll have access to as well. My goal is for everybody who wants to see the papers can see the papers. Everybody who has an idea that they think this church deserves the opportunity to work on will be willing and able to give us that idea. That's the whole point of having this meeting today, is so you know we've worked long hours to come to the point we are now, but this is not the end point. This is just the middle point. So today, I have Orlo somewhere, or someone with a microphone. Yes, there. So if there's anything that anybody is seeing right now in this that they would like to discuss or they have questions about, we have the opportunity to do that. We're not going to do anything else today other than just deal with this particular issue. So if you have questions, if you have suggestions, then I would ask that you would stand, and Orlo will bring you the microphone, and you can ask or comment as you see fit. Anybody have a comment? Keith, Orlo, will you get the...
First, thank you very much for all involved in bringing this forward for our opportunity to discuss. My questions are, will they be members of the congregation? Do they have to have membership? I think that needs to be discussed.
The membership responsibilities, the people who are on the executive board have to be members. The people who are on the other boards, I'm not sure. Carolyn, can you speak to that? I think there are some boards that, any board that's a financial board, the trustees, the endowments, those folks have to be members.
Well, and that's my point. I think that needs to be...
Yes.
I don't think we need to belabor that today, but I do think it needs to be discussed when you bring it back to us in January.
Okay, and that is absolutely the facts, that the executive council, the trustees, and the endowment all have to be members of the church.
Okay.
Is that accurate, Carolyn?
It will not change from what it is right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, good, thank you, Keith. Next.
Is there a place for the minister to be ex officio? Because I think in the timeline of things, I think it's important for the ministers, particularly I guess I'm referring to Pastor Dusty and Susan and maybe others, maybe Lisa in terms of music, that they need to maybe be a part of ex officio so they're hearing and being a part of the discussion.
Yes, that's a good point. And it does happen now. Dusty is a member, a non-voting member of all the boards that meet at this point in time. He is always, with a rare exception, at the Congregational Council meeting and will be at the Executive Board. He will not have a vote, but he will be at that, always at that board, is now, with the exception of being on vacation.
So again, I wasn't reading that in the proposal, so I think that
Right.
needs to be part of what is said to be more specific.
Okay, great, thank
The
you.
other thing I would say about your,
Okay, Lynette, that will not change from what it is right now.
Right,
If it's not on here, it means it's not going to change.
right. Go ahead, Keith.
okay, and then I think in terms of your governance structure, I would suggest that those arrows need to be flowing in opposite directions sometimes too, in terms to be most correct in terms of showing that communication is not only downwards or sidewards, but an opportunity for there to be discussion going both directions.
You're absolutely right, which is why actually there aren't arrows on those lines at all, is because it's confusing. The congregation, in truth, is above everything and makes the decisions about everything. The executive council answers, or the congregational council as we know it now, answers to the church as a whole. So what will happen as we move forward is that's not going to change, and the executive board, as they come up with an idea that needs to be presented to the congregation as we're doing today, will go now through this advisory council. And the advisory council will again say, yeah, good idea, no, let's tweak it this way or that. Then it goes from them back to the congregation again. So yes, the information does flow, but to tell you the honest truth, there wasn't enough room on the sign for me to do the arrows and put the congregation again at the bottom, but that's an excellent point of clarification. And one other thing that I want to say, while I don't want you to sit down yet, the one thing that I didn't mention is the other third group that we're identifying as a team is a group called Dreamers. Historically, there was a long-term planning group here. Our goal for the Dreamers is that they're the folks who are imagining, where Federated can be in 2.5 years or 2 years or 5 years. They're focused on that long-range planning and bringing those ideas to the executive board, who then brings them to the advisory council, who then brings them to the congregation. So they're not involved in the day-to-day ministries of the church that are represented in the advisory council, because that's where the programming is happening. That's where the Jubilee's being planned and the Easter's being planned. All of those things are happening out of that council. But I neglected to mention them before, and that's the only arrow that's up there, so that's what made me think about it. Go ahead.
And lastly, I think it would be proper to have a motion today for progression of discussion of this governance, just to have it in the records.
Okay.
That we are in agreement. Otherwise, if we're not in agreement, then you're doing work for naught.
Okay, I will be happy to accept that motion. Anybody else? All good comments. Thank you, Keith. I appreciate them. Looks like Milo has something up here.
My question is just about my optimism, I guess. Do we expect that in the future, when we increase numbers, that we go back and again amend the bylaws?
Well, I guess my answer to that is I don't ever want to go back. I always want to move forward. And yes, if the congregation grows and the governing structure of the church needs to change, then yes, probably the bylaws will change as we as a church change and move forward. The bylaws have to give us direction and parameter about how we function and what we do in any particular situation and time. So that's why we can't just leave the bylaws aside and move forward without moving them along with us. So I would anticipate that as long as this church exists, the bylaws will be revised from time to time.
I don't know how often they have been revised. I just thinking it would make it much more difficult to build a structure in which it can change without a complete revisal of the bylaws. I don't know how difficult that would be.
Well, so having looked at the bylaws a lot more in the last year than I ever did before, there are things in the bylaws that, probably will likely always change, will always remain. But the things that seem to require change is the functioning of the church as a whole. If you've got 400 people, it's going to function one way. If you have 70 people, it's going to function another. And so as we move forward with the mission of the church, and we grow or we don't grow, then those things, as they change, have to be reflected in the bylaws, as I understand it. Only makes kind of logical sense to me, but it's a good question. Anybody else? Kay, all the way in the back, Orlo. Right.
First, let me say thank you for all the hard work that's gone on to date. It's most appreciated, and I know it's been hard. You asked about bylaws. The last time we changed bylaws before now, if we get it done, was when I was president. It was a very smooth process. Barb Tyner was the chair of the bylaws committee at that time, and our focus at that time was to reduce the numbers on some of the committees on the boards because we had lesser congregation to be involved, and to change some of the requirements where you had to be a member or not be a member of the board. So we made those changes at that time, and I think it worked out very well. And I think this is another situation where we need to make changes because of the numbers of people that we have. One thing that I would caution, though, I had heard some rumors earlier about what we were going to do, and I almost fell off my chair. So I'm glad to hear what we're going to do is much more in keeping with what I was hoping. But you have a list of items there, 10 or 14 items there that you said you wanted to vote on in January. I think Keith's advised to say we should make a vote now that we want to go ahead, because we can't really elect those people until the bylaws get changed. So voting in January to do that is not going to help us. We need the bylaws to be changed, and for bylaw A to be changed from this to that, and then we can elect somebody to that position if it's different than what it is now. So I think just to stay on the legal side of things, get the bylaws changed, then change your elections and get the people involved. I will say, though, this plan, I think, puts a lot of pressure on the team leader, whoever that is, because that person is now sitting there with no one to help them. That's listed. Right. They are left with the job of going out and finding somebody or people to come up and say, I'll help you. Which that's all going to happen, but it is a lot more pressure for that team leader because he doesn't have a list to call and say, hey, we're going to have a meeting to figure out what we're going to do on Easter, or whatever the case may be. So those people that end up in those positions will be a little bit more hard pressed, I think, to get their work done.
As I mentioned earlier, that's absolutely one of the limitations of this plan. It is not, however, a limitation of this congregation. I know that if we want to have an organ, because ours is held together with a toothpick, then we say we need some money for an organ, and people step up, and now we have an organ with no toothpick. And if we're doing Jubilee Christmas, then people are willing to step up, but Kay is absolutely right. It cannot be the sole responsibility of the team leader to find the people who are working with them. So the passions that you have, the interests that you have, I'm asking you to step forward, and those people of you who are online that can't be here, still there are things that you can do to support those leaders of the church to see that we continue to do things as a family the way we do them now. The only thing that I'm asking is that we can function in the areas that we're passionate about and that we love and care about. Because if you're working on something that you're passionate about and you love and care about, the quality of what happens is going to be a whole different level than if I have to do it because I'm a deacon or I have to do it because I'm on the mission board. So I do think it's a good idea, Keith, to have a motion today. And I think it's a good idea to have a motion that we're just going to move forward. And if there's anybody here who thinks it's not a good idea, I would hope that you would step forward and say that. But I would appreciate a motion, I would appreciate a second, that we will move forward with the plan from the point it is now to wherever it will be. We'll have an opportunity for discussion about that the fourth Tuesday of December at Trimmer Hall at 6:30, which is the normal time of the Congregational Council. So if you have things that or would like to participate in that discussion, I would like that to be included in the motion also, that time will be set from now. Yes, Laura Marie? I didn't make a motion yet. But she's gonna second it, Keith, if you want to make it. If somebody would like to make that motion, Keith, I would appreciate it.
I prefer it come from somebody else.
Okay?
Oh, I will make the motion, since I'm president-elect and I feel like I should.
I can't hear.
Oh. Oh, okay, then I second Ty Cobb's motion. Okay, I didn't notice that.
So to be clear, the motion is that we're going to move forward with the proposal from today. There will be a meeting to discuss it on the fourth Tuesday of December at 6:30 in Trimmer,
December 28th.
December 28th. And it will be discussed again at the meeting, at another congregational meeting in January whose date is yet to be identified. Is that Sharon? You good with that? Okay, you got the second? Okay. All those in favor of said motion, please sign by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Motion carries. We will continue on our journey. I don't know if I said this before, but if I said it before, I'm going to say it again. A lot of people have spent time with me. A lot of people have contributed to where we are right now. Some of them are on boards as they exist right now. Some of them are not. I appreciate everybody's input. My mom said to me one time, "Why do you ask me my opinion and then you don't do what I say?" And so from a long time ago, I learned that, I don't have all the answers. And so I really, really invite people to share this journey with me. I appreciate those of you who have. I invite those of you who haven't to do so. And I just want you to know that I'm very grateful for all of you and for this place. So if there is nothing else, I'm going to adjourn the meeting, and I'm going to ask Dusty to pray. But if there's something else on the agenda, because mine just went flying, is there something else I'm supposed to do? No. Okay.
Dusty. We do thank you for all your hard work and all the people that you've been working with, and we'll pray. Father, we thank you for Federated Church, its ongoing mission, as we look at ways to continually increase our effectiveness, as we consider this proposal that is before us. Give us open hearts, open minds to consider, to talk, to support, to encourage. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you all for staying. And yes, who's calling me? Somebody call me?